this lead to somehow being able to delay whatever that might be in terms of the cognitive losses seen, with hearing loss in the elderly?
So Charlie, I mean, that's the key question, right? And until now, when I put on my hat as epidemiologist and as a public health researcher, these results are fascinating. That hearing loss increase our risk of dementia, increase our loss of thinking memory abilities over time. But the key question going forward, obviously, is that if we treat hearing loss and we treat it well with hearing aids and cochlear implants, can we delay that risk? Can we delay the onset of cognitive decline dementia? And right now, at least, the evidence, we just haven't done those studies quite yet. We know now, definitely, that for many people, hearing loss and hearing loss treatment clearly improve your social engagement, so you're more engaged in life. But in terms of the longer studies, looking at over time, does hearing loss treatment, can we reduce the risk of cognitive decline dementia? Those are studies that we're just now beginning with the National Institutes of Health to plan those exact clinical trials.
So where are when you look at this, and you have to be excited about the recognition of your work, what are the other cutting edges things that are happening in the field of hearing loss?
Well, one of the things to point out is that the cochlear implant does a beautiful job of replacing the function of the cochlea. But what we'd really like to be able to do is restore the function of the cochlea. And so many of the different causes of hearing loss, whether they're hereditary or whether they're caused by loud noise, end up killing those little hair cells in the cochlea. So something that a lot of people are working on now is to try to figure out a way that we could regenerate the hair cells. And the hair cells are kind of interesting because you're born with about 15,000 of them. That's all you get. If you lose them, you get no more. I mean, if you cut your skin, new skin cells grow, but if you kill your hair cells, no more ones grow. But if the hair cells die, then there's still cells remaining behind. And if you could figure out what turns a cell into a hair cell, what are those instructions, then you might be able to put those instructions into the remaining cells and turn the remaining cells into hair cells. This would be kind of a hair cell regeneration. And there are a lot of laboratories around the country that are trying to do this. First, figure out what makes a cell a hair cell, and then figure out what are the factors and how to deliver them into the cochlea to actually regrow hair cells and restore the function of hearing.
Where are we on gene therapy?
Gene therapy, as you know, it 10 years ago got kind of a bad rap because there was a lot of work. People were very excited, and perhaps patients demanded a little too much progress too quickly, and there were some unfortunate cases. I would say in the last 2 or 3 years, there have been some really notable successes in gene therapy. I mean, in my area, there's been a tremendous use of gene therapy in the retina, and examples where replacing a defective gene in the retina with gene therapy has restored at least a functional vision.
Oh, wow.
Now, gene therapy for the inner ear is a little bit further off. There have actually been, in the last year or two striking examples of success where gene therapy has restored at least some measure of hearing in animals. But there are no human clinical trials yet, and that's something that other groups are working on now.
And why not?
It's just too early. Of course, we need to make sure that they're very safe in animals before you begin to put something like that into a human.
And what do we know from the tests that have been done with animals so far?
The tests have gone into animals that have a specific type of hereditary hearing loss, and they have either corrected a defective gene or replaced a defective gene. And then when they measure the hearing of the animals after a certain number of weeks, then they can see that there's a great deal of function that's recovered.
With respect to hearing aids, I mean, obviously the question is, it's restoring hearing has a pervasive effect across both your life and your health. I mean, so the question really becomes, how do you correct? It's just mild hearing loss so that people don't simply wait until they're almost deaf in order to get some kind of corrective, whether it's a hearing aid or what it might be. Give us the sense of where we are with just correcting mild hearing loss.
Yes. And again, back to the hearing aids do a pretty good job of that. I think part of what I was trying to say before was that they're not always received as positively as they should be by the persons who could obtain a lot of benefit.
I mean, there are a lot of famous people that wear hearing aids, and I know many of them.
Yes.
And they make no, they readily say,
well,
it's made a difference in my life.
The one thing I would like to point out is a hearing aid
Including
is called
former presidents.
Yes, the ones that used this publicly. That's right. Hearing aids are called aids because that's what they are, an aid to hearing. An aid to hearing. And again, I think some of the negative, I don't want to say publicity, but some of the negative vibe that goes with having a hearing aid has to do with the fact it doesn't correct the hearing problem. When we have a cochlear implant that can actually do the stimulation in the right place in the cochlea to present the signal, it's sort of a solution. Yeah. What I'm doing here is putting on a amplifier, basically putting the amplifier at the ear, and I can shape the sound coming out of the amplifier to accommodate the hearing loss. You know, hearing loss can be shaped in all kinds of ways, but it doesn't cure anything. It aids to it.
Both Charlie and Frank pointed out it's extremely important to treat early.
Yes.
Because there is you participate in a conversation. If you can't follow it, you drop out. And this is really a common feature, the social isolation and the cognitive impairment that may be directed to it. And although we don't know the result, it's possible that having good hearing aids may prevent that, or at least retard.
Good hearing care, I would like to even say that. Good hearing care. Part of it is just making sure that you have somebody who understands all of that, all of this we're talking about. And so there's the, there's the audiologic care, there's the sometimes assistive listening devices and so on, just to make this so the hearing is improved.
Well, I think this is an important point for us to make, that people should have themselves tested when, from 55 on, and if they need hearing aids, they should use them.
Yeah. You would say?
Yes, one shouldn't wait too long, neither with the hearing aid nor to get the cochlear implant. And in fact, most of the cochlear implant recipients now have some hearing left, some considerable hearing. And it's our task to be really gentle with flexible electrodes and careful surgery to enable, for example, little children who might have a life expectancy of 120 years now, to in the future be able to profit from technologies or therapies that we don't know yet that were mentioned, or even some others within that long time.
With the powerful impact a cochlear implant has on children, what stands in the way of making them available to so many more young children? What's the issue that prevents more cochlear implants in children?
Globally, it's a factor 5 that's missing from what's being done today, which is 25,000 per year. And we would need 5 times as more to enable every deaf-born child per year on Earth to receive a cochlear implant.
It's expensive, isn't that one of the
problems? Is that the issue?
It's expensive, but it's also awareness that's lacking and infrastructure in some countries. And we will make them cheaper as economies of scale come into play, and everything takes too long, in my opinion. So
what's the cost element today for a cochlear implant?
It depends on what they are, but approximately you can get one for $15,000. 15, but that's really the lowest price, because it's not only the implant, it's also the work at the clinic before to identify the child, and then the surgery and the fitting and the therapy.
That's
all the aftercare.
Ear or for both ears?
This would be for 1 ear.
For 1 year, so 30,000.
And of course, if it's both ears, and in fact, Max was the first child who was implanted in both ears.
That's a big difference.
At an early age, makes a big difference. You can localize sound. For example, and you hear better in noise, and you have a much easier time at school, because those children who are deaf in 1 ear, they usually miss a year and have to repeat the year. They have a harder time to concentrate.
So, Frank, I make you the czar for hearing.
How is the czar for hearing?
What are you going to do?
So, I think that there's...
Give us your mission statement and your mandate and your agenda.
So I think the big thing overall is, we talk about low rates of hearing use, we talk about how expensive technology is, we talk about the importance of hearing loss, and you realize it's all sort of true, right? That overall, the big picture is that I think fundamentally now, as a society, we're all understanding now that hearing and the ability to communicate effectively is basically fundamental to everything we do, right? So as we age, as we all develop age-related hearing loss, the goal is to make sure we can functionally be at our best every single day, right? And I think, unfortunately, that's a lot of people don't understand that quite yet in terms of hearing, that it's so integral to that. So I think one big aspect is we definitely need sort of third-party reimbursement for hearing coverage, for hearing healthcare overall. I think there needs to be a much broader understanding across the whole society that hearing and hearing technologies and being able to hear effectively is just integral to what we do on a daily basis. I think at the same time, too, there needs to be a lot of changes at the hearing healthcare perspective, too. There's, unfortunately, this view that if you have hearing loss, you just need a hearing aid and you're cured, and nothing's farther from the truth like we just went over. And a lot of it has to do with technological issues. That's just not, a hearing aid a lot of times not enough. We need things like hearing loop induction technology that can transmit sounds wirelessly. We need those technologies. We also need more efficient models of hearing healthcare. Right now, there's one model of hearing healthcare. You go back and forth to an audiologist, and that'll always be the gold standard. But for a lot of us, if we just have a mild hearing loss, we may not want to make that commitment. You know, what are the types of technologies, models of delivery can make that more efficient so we can reach everybody? And I see the last big thing, I think, too, especially for basically all of us, 20, 30 years from now when I develop hearing loss too, one of the big questions remains unanswered is, what is the impact of treating hearing loss in older adults? Does it justify the cost the investment needs to go in? Can we actually reduce the risk of dementia over time? And I think this topic is timely, mainly because,
and those metrics would be powerful.
They would be, absolutely. And I think that's why just in a few months from now, the Institute of Medicine, which is sort of the major arbiter in many ways of U.S. government healthcare policy, they're taking on this topic. So they're hosting a 2-day workshop in January on the issue of hearing loss and healthy aging. What can we do to address hearing loss now to preserve healthy aging for all of us as we go forward?
Meaning not only increases age-related memory loss, it increases the incidence of Alzheimer's disease. So if you could prevent the onset of Alzheimer's disease or delay it with good hearing devices, that's a major public health advance.
So what would be your wish list, David?
Well, the thing is,
the hair cell regeneration.
But to keep in mind that a lot of hearing loss doesn't have to happen. I mean, some of it is the natural process of aging, but a lot of it is the terrible things that we do to our ears.
The sound in the environment.
The sound in the environment in factories. If you took the amount of sound, for instance, that a chainsaw puts out, in 2 hours, that would completely destroy the hair bundles. The sound makes the bundles move back and forth, and it just tears them apart. And the hair cells can recover to some extent, but if you do that over and over again, and there are plenty of guys using a chainsaw 2 hours a day, the hair cells die, and you never get them back. And we worry also about personal music players like iPods. You can crank those up just as loud as a chainsaw, and there's the possibility of causing hearing damage if you're listening to them.
So they may be doing a lot of damage to themselves.
They
don't even know.
May be, at 15 or 20 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's some people in broadcasting who have, headphones all the time, and they complain that they suffered hearing loss. So, I mean, where is what's the next thing to happen, you think?
Well, I think...
Next breakthrough.
I would say the next breakthrough is in learning to regenerate the hair cells. To figure
how close are we to that?
It's coming along, but I would say in 10 or 20 years, when somebody goes into the clinic with hearing loss, they would probably get a biological treatment of some sort. Not next year, not the year after, but 10 to 20 years.
What does that mean, biological treatment?
Well, that would be some kind of a gene therapy that might bring those instructions into the other cells to turn them into hair cells.
Is there a stem cell place for stem cell
stem
in this?
cells. And a lot of people are working on stem cells. Right. The difficulty with stem cells is that it's very difficult to surgically implant them into the ear to get them to go into the right place and to get them to turn into hair cells. So we tend to use stem cells in a different way, to use them to figure out what turns a cell into a hair cell, and then separately use those factors on the cells that are still in the cochlea.
Charlie, on the same lines too, actually, I know just in the last few years, as people recognize that hearing loss is a big critical public health issue, is that some major pharmaceutical companies, Pfizer, Sanofi Aventis, they are all opening pipelines now to see whether they can develop therapeutics for hearing loss. And the holy grail will obviously be some type of regenerative process, but I know Pfizer, just in the last few years, they've tested in a very, very early phase a drug that could possibly boost hearing on an everyday basis, right? And it's still too early to say whether it'll work or not, and it's just a very, very beginning, a very phase 1B study. But I think even among the big pharmaceutical companies now, until now, hearing loss just wasn't even on the radar screen. And I think just in the last couple of years now, with population demographics, the importance of hearing loss, the cognition, they're recognizing that there may be a pharmacologic target that possibly may be improve hearing symptomatically. It sounds far-fetched almost, but you realize going back 20, 30 years now, there have been more far-fetched things that have been targeted pharmacologically.
Ion channel and making it conduct more effectively? Or?
Well, there have been a couple of agents. I mean, they either function peripherally to boost the signal going across, or even possibly centrally to help with auditory processing. And these are very, very early phase drugs that are just beginning testing out for the first time in humans. But it's just so encouraging to see that when you get big pharma coming into the picture now, and big pharma in a good way, investing the funds, investing the scientists, investing basically the money to basically look for these solutions. So there's no reason why it couldn't happen.
What would you like to see done?
Perhaps you've all alluded to this too, more awareness. We talk about the
awareness and acceptance.
And acceptance, that's right. Awareness and then ultimately acceptance. But for whether it's the young person, I'll mention something about that, or the older person, lives change because of use of some prosthetic device, and whether it's cochlear implant for the more severe or a hearing aid for the less severe hearing loss, lives change. And so more awareness of doing this thing called getting your audiologic evaluation and see what's up. I would like to mention, with the other end of the age spectrum than that older group, the young children who have mild hearing loss are at a disadvantage for the rest of their lives, even though they have a mild hearing loss. That mild hearing loss does not make them candidates for a cochlear implant, and oftentimes we call it in our clinic the invisible disability or handicap, because parents want to ignore it because it's not so obvious, and if you just speak up, they'll hear. But we just finished 5 years worth of data collection on an NIH grant, and in that study really found out that those kids really are, I hate to say this out loud, but sort of smarter. If you consider that
those with hearing aids are
those
smarter.
with hearing aids relative to those who were not fit with hearing aids, appropriately fit hearing aids. But because their verbal intelligence is higher, their academic success is higher, they are going to go on to be productive citizens relative to their counterparts that were not fit with those hearing aids appropriately. And appropriately is a key word here, I'd like to point out.
Appropriately, yeah. So where's your creativity being applied? I mean, now that you've received this award and this recognition for your achievements, what's the next step for you?
Oh, there's tons of research projects ongoing in cochlear implants to improve them. There are even other hearing implants that are approved in this country and are being used. That's the middle ear implants. But we live in a split society in a way, because there is so much research and there will be so many improvements. But on the other hand, there are so many people in need of these solutions who don't have access to them. And we have to work on both sides of that. And I really want to work for many, many more years in both aspects of that to make progress there.
Now, what is MED-EL?
MED-EL is a company that produces hearing implants, cochlear implants and other. It's a private company, and we've helped about 80,000 people to receive cochlear implants. I'm really proud of that.
And where do they go to receive them?
They go to clinics, about 2,000 clinics in the world, in 100 countries.
The company is based in Austria.
Yeah.
Yes, it's based
But I mean, if you watch this television program, or you read a magazine or newspaper, or see something on the television about news, and you know that you need a cochlear implant, either for the elderly or, in fact, if that's possible, certainly for children and for your child, what do?
You go to an ENT clinic and find out more about them and whether you're a candidate.
So, Charlie, I'm a cochlear implant surgeon. That's my clinical skills as a cochlear implant surgeon. So, they're increasingly cochlear implantation is really revolving around specialized clinics, because you realize, I think I can say this, but I'm the surgeon, the surgery is actually the easy part. The surgery is a very straightforward, routine surgery, and you want to be a routine surgery. It's a bread and butter surgery nowadays. The hard part, and this sort of gets to why, in terms of expanding acts the cochlear implantation. A lot of times, not necessarily the surgery. A lot of times, it's all the other workforce issues around in terms of the training, the rehabilitation, the programming. And that's why increasingly cochlear implants are now done increasingly in sort of specialized centers where you have all the expertise in one place. Yeah. But most major academic medical centers with a large ENT or otolaryngology department will do cochlear implants, and that's usually where people start out. They'll get referred there by their primary care doctor or a local ENT who gets referred there, and they go through the stage of getting their hearing tested to see whether they're a candidate, and from there, it's a simple about hour and a half, 2 hour surgery for us nowadays. You go home the same day. About a month later, we saw the video before, you get the cochlear implant turned on for the first time. You hear the sound for the first time, which is really an exciting day for everybody. And then thereafter, for about 6 to 12 months after the implantation, you basically follow pretty routine about every few weeks, every few months to get the device slowly programmed and adjusted. And you basically learn to use language again. For people who are later in life again, they're literally learning to hear again for many for the first time. And for kids who are born deaf, they literally learn to use a sound for the first time to develop language.
What's the earliest age you can receive a cochlear implant?
So typically, the earliest typically is done usually about 6 months. That's pretty. People have gone a little lower than that, but in general, we usually don't implant less than 6 months of age. And then we've implanted adults up to 95 years old at Johns Hopkins now. Age is not a contraindication, put it this way, right?
Max, I want to return to this question. Help us understand from your very personal story what difference it's made in your life.
Well, I have a normal life. I know I'm a young man, and
everything.
Yeah, I think so. Everything. It changed everything in my life because if I couldn't hear anything, I would be in a kind of what do you call this?
A special school.
Yeah, special schools for special schools, and if I wear this cochlear implantat, when I wear this, I can do whatever I want. I can hear, and I can hear very good, I think so. And yeah, it's a normal life for me. And with all this, I wouldn't have a normal life, and I can't believe it.
So finally this, Eric, how does this connect? In a sense, we understand because of the explanation in the beginning, but where do you put this in terms of our ongoing understanding of the brain?
I think this is a perfect example of what the Obama initiative wants to do, to develop new technologies to, number one, understand the brain better and to be able to treat disorders of the brain. I think this is a paradigm. And the thing that comes to my mind, and perhaps this is something we can think about in the future, is to what degree can this be applied to other sensory losses? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have treatment for blindness? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have treatment for people who don't have a sense of smell or people who have difficulty with touch? So this is a major step forward that not only is an end in itself, but it challenges the imagination to think of what other things might be approached therapeutically. I think this is a fantastic paradigm.
Thank you for coming. Back in a moment. Stay with us.
C'est grave pour toi, Mitsuko?
Regarde. Phoenix rachète Mitsuko qui ne vaut rien. Résultat, Phoenix s'effondre en bourse. L'argent payé pour Mitsuko par une combine passe dans la caisse de Miami. Miami qui, elle, rachète Phoenix.
Ils achètent Phoenix avec l'argent de Phoenix. Ils ont la banque et l'argent.
Exactement. Et c'est sans doute pour réaliser cette opération qu'ils m'ont fait roi.
C'est légal, ça?
Non.
On the next Charlie Rose, Costa Gravas, a filmmaker, his new movie explores the world of global finance.
What fascinates me, it's not so much about politics, about the human beings who vote. And they get so attached to someone without any criticism. Without saying, oh, this guy did wrong things, it's not good. And keep voting sometimes for the same person again and again and justify him. I think we're not enough critical with our politicians.
Who's a politician that you admire?
De Gaulle. De Gaulle. Used to be a very important politician, I think.
You admired him?
Yes, very much. Very much.
Why didn't you make a movie about him?
Oh my God, because it's very difficult to make him. He was so big, so difficult, so complex as a character.
Yeah, but I mean, 68. You can make a
also,
movie just about 68, and there were movies made about 1968.
Yes, but it's there still, 68. Yes, they did some. They're not very good, all of
Really?
them. Yes, very difficult. You had an important president. I think Eisenhower was a kind of great president too.
Both war heroes.
Yeah, right.
But back to de Gaulle, because I'm fascinated by
Yes.
de Gaulle. What was it about de Gaulle? Because he drove Churchill and Roosevelt crazy. His ego was, he defined himself, I am France.
It was not his ego for him, it was for the country. The only person de Gaulle used to love was the country, France. Probably not so much the French people.
Yes.
But he liked the country,
Yes.
and the idea of his country, absolutely. And he really fought very strongly with the small army he had to destroy the Germans, to destroy the Nazis, with Churchill, who was probably one of the best. This is another great politician, because he's
Who was?
Churchill.
Oh,
Winston
Churchill, yes.
Great,
yes.
great.
Of course,
Yes.
he lost the election after the war.
Yes, but these are the us, the public,
Yeah.
citizens.
But tell me about de Gaulle beyond what we've just said that makes him fascinating to you. First of all, he wrote a great memoir.
He was a great writer.
Yes.
But first of all, I like de
And
Gaulle
so
for small
was Churchill,
details.
yeah.
De Gaulle, when he left from the power, he was supposed to have the salary of the president and also for the general. He only took the salary for the general's salary.
Oh, he took the general's salary.
That's right, not the president's.
Because he wanted to think of himself as a general rather than a president?
No, because he would like to not go after money.
Yes.
And he changed the industry of France. For example, he created the first plane, the Caravelle was the very first plane.
Right.
Since then, the French, European industry of planes became a very important one. He stopped the Algerian War.
Right.
And he stopped also the colonies, the black colonies France used to have in Africa.
Right.
He was really, in the small details, a very, very important president.
And then he came back to power. He left power
after
and then
getting
came back.
power. Yes, he came back in '58, and he used to do elections every 2 years, and he was voted every 2 years. And he was saying, if I won't be elected, I will run away from politics.
And what did he do when he retired the last time?
He finished his writing, his memories.
Yes.
And that's all. He didn't mix to anything.
Yeah, but he lived outside of Paris.
Outside of Paris, not Paris.
Yeah. Did you meet him?
No, never. It was this is the other thing. He used to meet very little people.
Yeah. I know there was a series of interviews done by one man of him that were famous interviews. You
Very
remember those?
famous.
Yeah.
It was amazing. He was there with tens and hundreds of journalists, and he was saying exactly what he wanted to do. And sometimes he never tried to seduce the journalists, or to propose things, or to say I will do this and that, without being sure he will do it them.
Mm-hmm.
Amerikalı gazeteci Charlie Ross'un ses getiren röportajları Bloomberg TT'de. Dünyaca ünlü girişimciler